StreamYard.
Smooth like the Joe Sturgis radio show. Broadcasting from some underground bar. Bigfoot ghosts, UFOs. Mysterious true crime.
Good evening, everybody. Like the intro said, this is Joel Sturgis Radio Show. Tonight, I got a great guest tonight. Good guy. Run into him all the time. Russ Victorian is everywhere, man. He's everywhere, but I always love running into him. And I always said to myself, whenever I get a chance, I'm going to have him on the air with me one of these days. He seems like a guy that's got something to say, man. So, Russ Victorian.
Yeah, how you doing tonight?
Good, man. How about yourself?
Oh, it's a great night. It's warming up a little bit outside. I mean, it can't be nicer.
You know, when I touched base with you about coming on the show, I got to say I was a little envious of you because you're down south enjoying the heat, and I was up here freezing. I was a little envious. I'm not even gonna lie. I'm like,
oh. I tell you, it waited for me to come home. I got home and there was 8+ inches on my driveway, so it was waiting for me to get back.
Yeah, it's not going anywhere either. We're stuck with this until at least April.
I tell you what, we had, it was like 46 degrees the other day, and I was up in the North Woods hiking out in the woods, and that was absolutely gorgeous.
It's not fair when it does that, in my opinion, because I'd rather just stay cold then. You know what? You're going to be cold. You might just stay cold, all right? And that way I can just get through it instead of giving us that little teaser. It's 40 degrees. But I got a question for you, Russ. You know, you've been let's start with where are you from? How'd you get into this? Because you do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I tell you what, I was probably, I always say about 8. I don't know the exact year, but I was about 8 when I realized that something was a little bit off kilter with, I was having some pretty unusual dreams and a few strange encounters that I was just kind of bypassing. And the reality of it is this continued randomly throughout most of my life. And I didn't really understand it. So I didn't take it real seriously until probably around 2005, 6, 7, somewhere in there. I just started feeling like things had picked up a little bit. And I was starting to change a little bit who I was too, you know? And so as I matured into it a little bit, these dreams of what I found out were dreams that were deceased people coming and talking to me.
So when you say that, now, when you started having these dreams and when you started contacting the other side, was it jarring for you, or was it something that was gradual? How did that come about?
Well, I think for the most part, I didn't understand it enough, and I didn't give it the time. I was busy with my military career, and I was just busy. So I was like, I think many people do. I really just looked past it. When weird things happened, like I say, one of my very first memories of the encounter I had at 8 or so was of a young Native man who was in a battle, and he got killed in a battle. And he showed me the scenario of the battle and how he got killed. And he gave me just a lot of times they will show me how they came to be deceased. In a lot of cases, they will do that.
Can I ask you why? Why do they do what they do? Is it for closure? Is it for comfort? Or why do they reach out?
I think that part of it is I feel a lot of spirits who are just kind of lost, confused, wandering a little bit, and they maybe want to cross to the light, but just miss the right opportunity for whatever reasons.
Mhm, mhm.
And for so many of the reasons why we say that ghosts exist, I mean, those exist for a number of reasons. And sometimes it takes somebody that's on the earth yet to kind of guide them in that direction a little bit.
So when we pass away, we all want to think to ourselves that someone's going to come guide us to the light. Someone's going to be there to hold our hand. Is that always the case or not the case?
I think the case is has a lot to do with faith. To be straightforward about it, if you have a faith that is going to guide you in a direction, that you're going to flow that direction much more naturally. Whereas if you are denying a source of faith and denying God per se, you may not necessarily just flow so naturally
Mhm.
through the light.
Gotcha. So your thoughts on Earth predict, or I shouldn't say predict, but have a large impact on how you experience the afterlife.
Absolutely. That's what I believe.
So if you're a believer in God, like full disclosure, I am. I believe in a higher power. I believe
Mhm.
that there's a God, but not everybody does that. As we know, the world is full of different religions, different ways of viewing. Not all of them are, and there's none of them that are wrong. My opinion. It's just different ways of viewing the world. Is there what there's one no uniform afterlife? It's you make your own in some ways. Are you kind of thinking?
Well, I think it's all about the guiding process of, if you say you believe in God, you are naturally going to flow. Now, and I am I'm just a true believer that, and this is because I've listened to hundreds of near death testimonies and out of body experiences as well. I've had one myself, and I firmly believe, based on listening to all these and on my personal experiences, that you will find a path through Jesus. And even if you don't believe, I mean, all these different cultures, people have had near death experiences. And the majority of them, I'm not going to say all, but the majority of them say, I met up with a person of the light and I automatically knew it was Jesus.
Mhm, mhm.
It just, even if they are of a different culture or even religion or denomination, whatever you might say, um, they have an understanding when you meet Jesus. And I have these same experiences when I meet, you just kind of know. You don't have to
Yeah.
be, you don't have to have a saint or somebody come to you and say, hey, this is who I am. You just automatically know in the afterlife portion. That stuff just comes to you as knowledge.
Is that where we have the separation between our earthly selves and our spiritual selves? Is
Well,
that why we know?
I mean, I think there's definitely um, a basis behind that. That's it's there's probably a lot more to it, and I don't mean to simplify it, but I just want to so people kind of understand. I suppose I don't want to oversimplify it because I know there's a lot more going on than what I even understand or can describe.
Mhm,
But I
mhm.
know there's a light, and in the working with the spirits that I have, and in the communications that I have, they are seeking a reconciliation, because otherwise they're just kind of lost. But they can be lost for a lot of reasons, as you know, as a long-time paranormal investigator. Maybe there's a dramatic situation that happened in their life, or some type of trauma. There's many reasons why they could kind of miss that window.
It's funny because I'm glad you mentioned that, and I've been around a little bit. I could see you did a little bit of your research on who I am too before doing the show. That's good. I was dealing with a case several years ago of a guy in his mid-40s. He laid down to take a nap. He died of an aneurysm during that nap, and he was going about his daily life like he was still alive. But
Hmm.
he was he something had happened that made this spirit find out a hard way that he was dead. And I have never seen such an anger out of a spirit because, so much unfinished business, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the thing of it, I guess my point is there's a lot of souls out there that can be lost due to not knowing. And the reason why I bring that up is you're very spiritual. You have this awesome website. I've been looking at the website over there. It's been a lot of really interesting. RussVictorian.com / I forget to talk tonight. Search for spirits. I'm going to put that up there on the ticker here in a second where you guys can click on that. What do you do, Russ, when you come and you find a spirit that doesn't know they're dead, that doesn't show you how they died, like they're not even mindful they're dead? How do you help them reconcile that?
I would do the same as I would do with somebody who's living. And, in the way that I might communicate with them to just talk them through why this is a peaceful route for them to utilize. And like I say, they may be of different cultures and different things. And I just explained that this is for all of us. This path is for everybody. You don't have to feel left out. You don't have to let the evil and the bad things that happen on earth determine your salvation.
Yeah.
You don't have to let that determine your salvation. This is a path for all of us that we can take. And I explain that to them. And sometimes they'll even ask the question and I'll go further. And a lot of times I do run into people who have had trauma or pain or frustrations on earth, and they'll come to me and I might have to explain, that, yeah, sometimes some of us have to really go through some tough experiences on earth, and they really are heart-wrenching, heartbreaking, traumatic, but in the end, we learn so that we can teach others, so that we can become closer to God, and we know we got to keep that path. We can't allow ourselves to get too far off. But even at the point of being deceased, they can be like, hey, I need help. I'm just stuck here. I need help with this right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I give them a few words of encouragement, let's just say.
Do you come in contact with spirits that are just afraid, that they're uncertain, they don't know what's next, and they've almost feel like they've been left behind?
Well, I mean, and there's always a fear that something they did in life might cause them to go someplace they don't want to go in the afterlife. So that's
gotcha. Fear of judgment. Yeah, that makes total sense. Fear of judgment
is one of the biggest ones, I think, that, and the message I send back to them is go into this with a heart full of repentance and faith, repentance and faith. And that's what, if you go through judgment and you go through that period, I mean, they're not going to be judging the little stuff. They're going to be judging, Jesus and the Lord God Almighty. They are looking at your heart, to see, did you love people? Did you share love?
Yeah. How did you treat? Yeah.
How did you treat?
How were you when you were here?
Yeah.
How did you? Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't mean to jump all over you, but I did. I stepped all over you. I'm sorry about that, man.
Right.
It's like how did you make this a better place while you were there? What did you do with your time? Did
you stole that pack of gum, or you stole that car? Even that's not something that they're that concerned about. This is all my opinion based on what I've learned anyway. I understand there's other people that might slightly fluctuate in their beliefs in different ways, but I definitely think that it helps a lot to have faith.
Now you said it. Yeah. So you said earlier you had your own near-death experience. Do you want to share, or is that something you don't really speak of? I mean,
no. It actually, mine was an out of body. So the near death and out of body, sometimes they're similar. Mine was an out of body. I was laying in bed one night, and suddenly I heard a voice communicate with me, and I knew that they wanted me to focus, and so I rolled over onto my back, and I'm looking up at the ceiling, and I just naturally lift my chin up, and that's a term we use a lot for crossing spirits over, is chin up, because it's a process of how you look up, so to speak. But anyway, so I'm in that position, and all of a sudden I'm seeing some blinking lights, this and that, just like movement of light and dark in my eyeballs. And all of a sudden I realize I'm moving. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going somewhere. And so I'm moving, and I'm in some type of, I wouldn't call it a tube, because it wasn't like a tube, but it was just moving through space. And all of a sudden I came upon this, what I might call a hallway. There was a old warehouse, and there was illegal things going on in this warehouse. And in the hallways off of this warehouse, there were demons, really, in short, and they had people in these little cages. And I'm not going to get too far into that. I'm going to jump ahead, though. I had to go through this section, and all of a sudden I'm laying in this room. Now I'm in this room, and I'm looking up, and I had kind of moved as if my body was a magic blanket, so to speak, or magic rug. That's the way I felt. And I felt as if I was on a rug moving, but it was my body I was moving on. So it's weird. But all of a sudden I'm laying in this room, and there is a fella sitting next to me. And I'm taking into my conscious what's all going on, trying to put this into some kind of perspective as a human being. And this fella, who I learned to be was an angel, he points down at where the soul might be, and just in your belly area, just your high belly area. And he says, God is with you. And he says, but you need to focus a lot more. And suddenly he had this big orb in his hand, and I could see like heaven, like a big castle was in this orb. You need to focus more on what's up here and less about what's down here. He says, focus more on the heavens and what's going to get you to heaven. And then after he said that, I was just there kind of taking it in. And all of a sudden, the room I noticed was starting to fill with flies. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? And the flies are coming around. Well, the flies was the evil. And they were trying to take over that OBE. And, or it was a test of sort, one or the other, because suddenly I saw there was a kind of a tree there. The walls were there, but you could just see through them. Like you knew they were walls, but you could see beyond them into outer space, so to speak. But up on the wall was a light switch. And I kept thinking, boy, if I could just get to that light switch, that's familiar to me. I can hit the light switch on and everything will be normal. And so I did. I weaseled my way over there. Nice flies over, and he's just looking at me. He wasn't judging me, but he's like, okay, you're still kind of stuck on this earth thing, on what's on earth.
You kind of like the earth.
It came naturally to want to do something that was physical and something that was real to me in the moment, versus be like, I trust in God, I trust in Jesus. Now I had another situation. It was maybe a year later, and in that case it was very similar, but it was ants, and the ants started crawling on me in the middle of my vision. And that time I stood up from the bed and I'm shaking these ants off. And that time I just looked up and I said, God, I know what to do this time. I asked you to get these ants and this evil out of here. It was gone in a second.
Just gone.
That was the difference. That was my growth from that stage to the next stage. Because I was a very lukewarm Christian for many, 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 many years. I just,
Mhm.
went to church. I tried to make it on Sundays, but I had an awakening about 2018 that just changed everything. And, and I, and I've just grown from there. That's all I
I,
can say.
I mean, what a poignant moment for you. I mean, that had to have been just totally paradigm changing right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
These visions. Was there any confusion what to do next, or did you hit the ground running after these visions? You hit the ground running, or did you take a minute?
Very, yeah. In most cases, I try to kind of meditate over what I experienced and fit it into what I sometimes call truth line. What is truth? Because we have to, kind of decipher. We have to look through, because some of the information supernaturally will be thrown on you to confuse you, misguide you, mislead you, and you have to discern between. But in most cases, I have found, when it comes from the higher heavens, whether it be angels or such, you can feel that energy, and it's so much on the energy. When something bad comes to the room and tries to attack me, that because that energy is like, just I don't want to use the word frightening,
Yeah.
but it's different. It's darker. It's unpleasant, and you can tell the difference between the two energies pretty easy usually.
Ever frightened? Anything ever scare you?
Not so much. I mean, because I had been doing paranormal investigations for years, before I really started getting into the visions heavy. Like I say, I was all the way up into maybe 50, and I had not paid any attention. I thought truly some of the death experiences and dreams I had, I thought for a moment I was maybe dreaming about different lives I had lived or something. That's how clear and real they were to me. But then I
Mhm.
realized at some point, I was like, no, that's not me. That's people showing me. And
Huh.
that was kind of the big, I'm like, wait a minute. These aren't all my lives. People are showing me. And I learned that because I started meditating at investigations. And at the meditations, the spirits, the deceased that were still in those homes or in those frequencies would show me how they died. And I'm like, well, that's just like my dream
So you're able to kind of tap into others, what their experiences are too.
of the deceased.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of the deceased. So you're able to not only hear them, talk with them, but you're able to visually see
It's
what's
not a
going
perfect
on.
system. It's not a perfect system. I would never call myself by any title, that's for sure. But I mean, I've gone into a home. One of my greatest stories was there was a child of 3 or 4 that would not go into his bedroom. He said, "Ma, somebody yelled at me and told me to get out of my bedroom," and so he wouldn't go into his bedroom anymore. And the family was they knew that they wouldn't go into this room to clean it or nothing.
Mhm.
And so they called us up, and Mark and I went over there. And I said, well, we got to figure this out. And I said, well, there's only one way. And I went and laid on the child's bed. And I set a couple meters around me so I knew he was coming close. And I said, we're going to settle this tonight. We're going to figure this out. And it wasn't but just a second. My meter started going off. And he started kind of communicating me more in a telepathic way. And he was an old vet, an old man who had died potentially at that house or sometime in the past or nearby, but he had kind of claimed that spot. Well, the old family that lived in that house, he was always left alone, but when the new family moved in, they had several kids, so now they were using up all the bedrooms and wanted to use the bedroom where this old veteran was in. And he like, I don't care for this. I don't care
He
for this
wasn't
at
too
all.
keen.
Yeah,
He
this is
didn't want a
my
roommate.
yeah. And I said, well, I got a better solution. I said, let's get you the peace you desire. And he was
Yeah.
still in some pain from the old war wounds and stuff that he was living with as an old man. And I said, let's find you some peace. And we crossed him over and that was that,
What's it like when you cross someone over? I mean, what's it feel like? What do you see anything? How does it feel for others? I mean,
Yeah.
what's that like?
It truly is. There's a lot of scenarios to that. In some cases, like with this fella, like I say, all of us, you realize that the meters aren't measuring anything anymore. When we hit the mail meters hard when we go into a house.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes us within 30 minutes, we fully identify potentially what's there and how many and what we're dealing. We just kind of get that ironed out quick. But when they cross over, we'll continue to move about the house and monitor the EMF and the temperature and different things in the house, and making sure that we're comfortable that whatever it is crossed over. Sometimes there is a 72-hour window, which we talk about a lot. It takes about 72 hours once we cleanse and cross over for the energy to all settle out. Like we call it, it's kind of like one of those little Christmas globes you shake up,
Yeah.
It takes about 72 hours for the energy to settle out. And so I don't call the family back till about 7-8 days later, because I don't want to hear what happened in that first 3 days. They might still hear knocking, may have nightmare stuff, but after that 72 hours, it's clean. Sometimes it's clean right off the bat, and that's how we know they crossed over.
So it's not an instantaneous thing like in the movies where the spirit crosses, life is happy, and everybody goes right back to what they're doing. It can be a process. It's not an instant deal.
Yeah, some cross immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And some are struggling a little bit more, and they need and I am absolutely certain with all my heart that when we're in the process of working in a home, that there not only is angels there, but there also are saints there on a lot of occasions, and we'll sometimes pick up their names in the audio that we've recorded.
Have you ever been physically assaulted by a spirit?
Not too bad. I mean, the scratches, the flicks in the hair and the ear, just my equipment has, but not me really personally.
The reason why I bring that up is because you see a lot of paranormal television, and there's some investigators on TV. Oh my God, dude, I was scratched, or this or that, or every other episode they're getting possessed, stuff like that.
That has a lot to do with grounding and protections.
Okay.
If you have your grounding and protections tight, you're going to be pretty safe. So I very, very rarely encounter that. We've had plenty of physicality, but I've not had it against me in years. Just for a short window I did while I was building on my protections.
Yeah. So what do you do to ground yourself? I mean, what would the advice be to any investigators out there that are maybe struggling with grounding themselves or struggling with not having followers?
Yeah, like I say, I'm going to be honest. This is my story, so to speak. Other people might have other ways, but my grounding is all in my faith. So it comes with having a daily relationship with God, and I work in the name of Jesus Christ as a servant of God, and that's how in my mind, I am capable of the gifts that God has given me, because I am following kind of his guideline. Jesus is the way, truth, and the life. And when I do everything, it's in the name of Jesus Christ, and that's how we reconcile the spirits and the energies in a home. And so that process of having a daily relationship, and a daily relationship can mean a lot to a lot of people. Mine, I read not a lot, but I read a little bit out of the Bible, probably 4 or 5 nights a week at least. And I'm not, like I say, I don't want to make people think that they got to read an hour every night. I read like 7 minutes at most. 7 minutes, maybe a verse out of the Old Testament, maybe a psalm, a little verse out of the New Testament, and then I just think about that as I say a prayer and go to sleep. And
Would that be your spiritual armor? I've heard
yeah,
a lot of people talk about
armor,
spiritual armor.
the faith, the word of God, and that whole the armor and the sword and salvation. And that's all a part of that. Psalm 91 talks a lot about the wing of the Lord protecting you. I prescribe Psalm 91 to a lot of people. Beautiful psalm, and very protective. Saint Michael prayer. I mean, that's huge. We use that a lot. These are things that we use a lot while we're out there.
I had a good friend of mine that was exorcist and a pastor, and still is a good friend of mine, Jim Long, and he calls us spiritual hygiene. You got to keep your spiritual hygiene going, and that's true. That is true. I mean, if you don't keep that going,
there's
really
a process
easy.
of keeping yourself cleansed. Just understanding what is all sin, what are all sins, and that's kind of a process in itself, and just the idea that before I go into a case, I confess through everything I could think of, and I confess, and I ask for guidance along the way with each case, and I maintain that daily relationship. And for me, and as I say to a lot of my clients, I say, confess, try to get communion, at least once a month. I always say, whatever, and communion can be received through, different denominations. I'm not telling anybody that they got to jump ship and also do this and that. That's their path. I'm not here to tell people how to take their path. I just say what works for me.
Yeah. Dude, man, you're really interesting because you know so much about the spiritual side of things, and I think that gets lost in the shuffle of the blinking lights of the equipment sometimes. Everybody's interested in the REM pod, everyone's interested in this, and everyone's interested in that. Sometimes the spiritual side kind of takes a seat, back seat to some of that instant gratification and investigation, when really it's a people business, whether it be alive or dead. I mean, we're dealing with people, trying to help people.
Absolutely.
And I like that. I like, you have yet to bring up a piece of equipment like, oh, my REM pod went off 3 times. No, you've been at this long enough. That's
I'm down to about one
there's a
suitcase
time
now.
and a place, for that equipment.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds like you've really got your stuff together, man, and I really appreciate that, or really respect that.
Thank you.
You don't seem like the kind of guy that's a big chest thumper going, look at me, look how great I am. You're giving you're giving it all to God. God does it all. God gives us the ability to do what we do.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate that. Every year, my buddies and I, we put on a Bigfoot event in Grand Rapids. And I want to say that you've been to every one of them. I want to say
at least the last couple of years in a row. That's sure.
Yes. Yeah. And I always like seeing you there. I always like talking with you. It's always interesting. So Sasquatch, where you at, man? I mean,
Tell you what, it has been an amazing path that came just by happenstance. Like I say, we started the paranormal investigation team around 11 or 12, somewhere back in then. And Mark joined me, and we got into the point where, like I say, we started doing all these house calls and getting more into the healing portion. And all of a sudden, we started getting a lot of calls that involved strange noises, strange activity out in the backwoods or this and that. And boy, and they just kept coming, those types of calls. And it didn't take long. I mean, I had some types of encounters dating back, I remember back to the late 90s, and I was sitting there having a conversation with an old neighbor up around a bonfire up north in Itasca County. And one time we were sitting there and it was late and the fire was crackling. He says, sometimes late at night, he says, can't sleep, he says, so I get in the car and I drive around. He says, I've been trying to see if I can see Bigfoot. I said, really? That's crazy, you know? And he says, well, I'm not the only one. He says, there's another guy that's out there driving, and I run into him every once in a while. And I said, well, did you see one? He says, no, but the other guy did. And he said, I believed him. And I said, well, if you're telling me I believe you too, yeah, they probably exist. I don't know. And jump ahead so many years, and we start getting a lot more calls and stuff on this. And they are paranormal related. We go there maybe for a paranormal issue, but find out that there's also some other activity going on that might be cryptid related. And so, you know, where is the line? I don't know.
Yeah.
That line is very gray. But I have had plenty of experiences of Sasquatch as a physical specimen, you know, as a species. But I've also had the encounters that twist in ways that are hard to describe or understand, characteristics that aren't normal for me to, you know.
They sure seem to be linked, don't they? You know, there's something going on. You know, because I've run into the same thing. You know, it seems like UFOs, Bigfoot, ghosts, it all kind of falls under that paranormal, I guess, for lack of a better term, umbrella, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you go to one case expecting something, and like you'd said, you're totally getting something different. You know, and it's not uncommon. It's not uncommon at all. In fact, I've been on a Bigfoot expedition. I've seen a UFO. You know, which was really out of left field. Like, I wasn't here expecting to see a UFO, but here I am looking at this UFO. You know, and so what do you think? I never want to tell anyone what they should or shouldn't believe, especially when it comes to paranormal. Sasquatch is no different. Do you believe it's flesh and blood, or do you think it's more of a spiritual entity, Sasquatch?
And I can answer that only in the way that I can testimony. And I tell that to a lot of people, just like what you said. I cannot describe, I only can describe what I've physically and supernaturally encountered. And also, with that said, I'll tell you about my very first encounter that where I actually physically saw something. And I was sitting out in the woods pretty much by myself. There was nobody else up there at the time. And I was up in an elevated stand, and I heard something walking in. And I'm like, but I'm looking, and there's like nothing to see, right? I'm like, you know, if you are a forest person, a Sasquatch, you know, we walk up here a little closer and just, you know, walk in here so I can hear for sure those footsteps. I hear a couple more footsteps. Then I said, well, you know, so if you are Sasquatch or a forest person or Sasquatch, as I sometimes would say back then, could you show yourself to me? I mean, could you show? And to my surprise, I got a yes response back, you know, more of a telepathic type. Sure. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I'm sitting there and I'm just like staring, and there's this big aspen in front of me. It's probably about a 12-inch, 14-inch tree, pretty good sized. And I'm just sitting there, and I see the shadow of a Sasquatch, what I assumed to be, I mean, it was tall. I mean, it was 9 feet for sure. And it walked right in front of me. I'm talking like 8 feet in front of me, right past that white. And his shadow just was plain as day. And he just went by, and I didn't even question it. I said, thank you. I said, I really appreciate it. And that was it. But it was just a shadow. It was
yeah. You know, because given the eyewitness accounts, the size of these creatures, if they were violent, you know it.
Yeah.
You know, 99% of all sightings I've taken in are of a peaceful nature. I don't think I can even really tell you one that was horribly violent. Sure, it startled a few people. Sure, it scared them. But
Yeah.
I haven't heard of a Bigfoot Sasquatch that had ill intent. It
Yeah.
was usually, hey, we ran into each other. I saw him. He saw me. Usually they turn around, they walk away. You know, so I don't think that they're, you know, I mean, so that's cool that you're able to communicate with them, or you had that moment. So that gives us an idea that there's a higher intelligence at work here. Do you think that maybe they're even smarter than we are in a lot of ways? And that's why they avoid detection?
I mean, I think smart can be described and they are very forest smart. They are smart in ways that are based on abilities. They have abilities. We have some abilities that spirits, and I believe the forest people were like, oh, I wish I had their abilities. But we're looking at them saying, boy, I wish I had theirs. You know, I wish I had their abilities. So I think we have abilities that complement in a way at times. And but that is the barrier that has provided them with safety. They've been seen in probably every county, I bet, in Minnesota. I mean, I had a report out in farm country. One of us standing there plain as day one morning, staring into the guy's shed. Why? There's nothing in the shed that he would want for certain. But they got out, the mother and the son came out of the house in the morning, and there was a big old 8-9 foot Sasquatch standing looking into their shed. Why? Who even knows?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
So I mean, they know they can protect themselves in ways that are very smart.
Yeah. Yeah. Because
other ways maybe not as smart in other areas. I don't know for sure.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. You know, because when we go in the woods, you and I, anyone that's human like us, we're kind of at the mercy of them. I mean, that's their court right there. You know, I mean, that's their area. And I have been escorted out of the woods a time or two by Bigfoot. I could hear them. I just knew it. You just know that they're escorting you out. It's time for you to go now. They'll give you a little bit of time, but once you wore out your welcome, it's fairly evident that you wore out your welcome. Never been violent, but it's always been a gentle escort out. You will be leaving now. Have you ever had that happen to you?
Absolutely. We've had that happen a few times. And when we get, and like say, and people talk about it, you get in close, we've had it where suddenly your ears are ringing, or suddenly you're just getting that, you know, that's not even in words, but it's like you say, this is where we're turning around now. And you just know it. And times where maybe you didn't turn around when you should have, and you go back to the truck and you're sitting in the front seat of your truck sick to your stomach. Or something like that.
Yeah. What do you think about the infrasound?
Infrasound, yeah.
You know,
that is definitely, there's something to it. I mean, I can't describe it much farther than the ear ringing, the kind of a sensation sometimes, an EMF type sensation. And sometimes for me, it can make me physically sick too sometimes.
Yeah.
If I'm not paying attention to detail, and when I realize I should be turning around and avoiding an area.
Are you a tree knocker?
I will. I'm not against it.
You know, because there's some people that say, well, I wouldn't be tree knocking. I'll ask why. And they said, because you don't know what you're saying.
I'm into variation. I try different things.
Yeah.
And I have found that some places that different things work better than in other places. And you know, and so it depends. We were moving along in the truck, and we do a lot of slow driving around in the countryside, and we heard a little kind of a grunt off the side. We got out and got into probably about a almost 25-minute back and forth, very light wood knocks, couple here, a couple there. My partner Mark, he was the one that was doing the responding. And I walked away. I went up and I looked up and down the road for tracks. Blah, blah, blah. I come back like 15 minutes later. He's still going on. And he says, I think it's coming to a close. It's slowing down. the responses. And all of a sudden we both physically heard whatever it was walked off into the deeper woods, and that was it. So what what we're saying for 20 minutes that we're responding back to? I mean, other than just trying to mimic each other.
Yeah, yeah, and then him walking away or it walking away. It's like, I'm done now. I'm done this conversation. See you guys later. I'm done with you. It's almost like they get bored with you. Yeah, like, all right.
Well, I think, they know guys like you and I and others that are out there, they kind of know. They know what our heart looks like.
Yeah.
They know what our intent is. And they just know who you are. And once you get to know one, I really think that in a supernatural way, that goes out to all the other ones. And they know. So when I go out to North Dakota and I'm in spots in South Dakota, I should say, I had experiences out there. And I just felt as if they knew that I had already had communications. So then when I went out to Northern California to the Patterson-Gimlin site, I just felt like they knew already. Yeah. And they were throwing stuff at me, just knowing that I already had a knowledge of sort that I don't know how to describe that, but I think you know what I mean.
Yeah. What do you think the rock throwing's all about? Is that just acknowledgement?
We've had a variety of different kinds. We've had I'm going to throw this rock that's this big into the lake. And it's just a giant rock that's thrown in the lake. And it's a big kablunch. And it's like, I'm here and I'm big, Yeah. But we've also been in spots. I remember one of our earlier cases, we were out in the middle of this woods. And it sounded like stones that were maybe no more than an inch around at most. And them things were sailing through the leaves and it moving like not as fast as a bullet or anything, but
yeah.
And every so often they were just whipping those stones and they were just playing. At that point, they were just playing. I've had them throw sticks at my camper during the night while I'm trying to rest and sleep out in the air, So, sometimes it's just maybe boredom. There is some boredom.
I think they like to mess with people a little bit. And that's all right. That's all right. Because, it gives you a story, gives you some communication. And plus, I think, like you'd said, they kind of know who they're dealing with.
They'll come up, knock table. We always set a table up for equipment. And they'll knock right on the table in the middle of the night while we're sleeping. Yeah. I mean, just this endless stories you can go on and on.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and they never end. They never do end. Yeah. Russ, got to ask you, what's the most haunted place you've been to that you can disclose?
The most haunted, both of them were houses.
Yeah.
I have encountered houses that are so far beyond any other location I've been to. I mean, I've been to a lot of public locations, Waverly Hills, this cemetery, that road, this, that. But I would say I've had two houses that were by far the most creepiest and most haunted of anything anywhere I've ever been. And I can't disclose those locations.
Yeah.
But I would say two of my houses that I've investigated that we cleansed were probably the most, stuff getting thrown around the house. And it sounded like cattle running through the kitchen of the house while we were in the basement. I mean, just intense craziness.
You just want to look at these people and go, how the hell are you still living here? Yeah. No, I've seen a couple. If there was a public location, somebody wanted to get into doing this, doing what you do, kind of doing what I do, what's your advice? How do you begin? Because there's a lot of would-be people that are interested in this.
Yeah, I would say, first and foremost, and a lot of people ask me this question, and I say, focus on a path, and start with getting yourself a foundation, because you don't want to throw yourself out and get yourself in trouble, because then you got to call me. And I don't have a problem with that, but I've had to work with a lot of people from different teams who have kind of gotten themselves in a little bit of trouble here and there. And I'm certainly always open to that, to helping anybody. But work on getting those foundations and protections lined up. and get that. However you are going to manage that, have a good plan going in. Don't just throw yourself in there like an old rag doll and then try to go see the haunted dolls out in New England or something. I mean,
Yeah.
You got to provide yourself with some sort of protection. And I always suggest that the mail meter to me is probably our number one tool. That and the audio devices we use are probably the two most used devices if you want to buy equipment. If you're going to do something, I mean, there is a number of very, very nice. I've been in probably almost every small, potentially haunted hotel in the state of Minnesota. And if they are advertising this, openly advertising that they are, receptive to investigators of the paranormal coming into the locations, take advantage of it. I mean, and there's just little hotels like that, several of them in Minnesota, that are great places to start. And several of these are already having activities going on that welcome people in. That's what I would suggest. I firmly believe that a lot of people aren't set up to handle home investigations.
Yeah.
I mean, it does not pay to go into a home where you're going to stir up activity and potentially cause more danger and distress for a living family. If you don't have the fact, the situation and the knowledge to go in and actually help them the way they are needed. But there are plenty other places to go,
Yeah, tons of them out there, tons of places. And over the last 15 years, it's really become a whole industry unto itself. I remember way back in the day, I've been doing this since 92, 93, when no one wanted to be called haunted. No, we're not haunted. Now it's the opposite. Come stay and investigate. So it's really a great time to get into this if you have an interest in it. This is really a great time to do it. Years ago, it was hard sledding. Now it's a lot easier, a lot more accepted than it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
So what's next for Russ Victorian? What's the next project? What do you got going on?
Well, we're heading down to Wabasha for their event down there at the hotel. And they have an event coming up on 10th, 11th. I don't have all the information in front of me, but, there's an event down there that weekend. And then we have a couple home investigations already lined up for January. And, of course, we always try to fit in one Search for Sasquatch hike every month. I try to get in at least one, if it's by myself or if it's with a team, whatever, and you never know what calls come between now and then. I just put out a video this morning, as a matter of fact, on YouTube, Search for Sasquatch, where I had a dream about an area out in the woods, and this dream was old. The spot wasn't a spot that I could get to that readily. So I just needed the right opportunity. But I had this dream about this place out in the woods. And it was unusual in the fact that I had this vision. It was a dream, but I was out in this woods and I saw like this copper antenna out there and this white. The only thing I can really call it is kind of like a landing type zone situation where you had antenna and this tower, and they were out in this woods. And I said, well, I know there's nothing out in that woods. So, but here it is 2 years later, I finally made the trek out to this woods. Only been out there like one time in my life. There's no reason I should be dreaming about this place. And so I went out there and walked all over this woods, scouted it out pretty good. I found two potential clearings that were a bit, proximity wise, seemed to match the dream a little bit. And nearby those, I ran into a radius of maybe about 40, 50 feet around that was filled with all kinds of little structures, branch structures. And when I went over there and I'm in there and I'm taking pictures, all of a sudden the ravens start making just a racket. And eventually they fly off. I move on. Then I hear another, what sounds like a vocalization come from where I was just standing taking pictures. And I just made a little video out of that, and I put that on Search for Sasquatch on YouTube this morning. So if people like to watch that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll link that into the description too when we put this video out. Russ, thanks a ton for coming on, man. Russ Victorian, everybody. Check it out, russvictorian.com/search for spirits. Very cool website, full of good information over there too. Till next time, guys, take care of each other, love each other. Again, Russ, thanks so much for sitting with us and talking with us.
Yep.
Smooth like the Joe Sturgis radio show. Broadcast